Welcome back. Welcome back to the automobile lecture. Now, today we'll learn the two objectives. One is to necessity and construction of working of clutch, and second is the types of clutches used in the automobile. Now, clutch is a very important part which engages and disengages your engine from the transmission system. You can observe here in this animation the engine is working where the power is developed. From this power, the power is given to this flywheel. Now from this flywheel, I wanted to transfer this power to the next part, that is gearbox. This is the one component of the transmission. Then it goes to the propeller shaft, then differential, and the wheels. It goes to the total transmission system. Now here is the main element, which is called the clutch. The function of the clutch is a mechanism which connects or disconnects the transmission of power from one working part to another. That is crankshaft. This is crankshaft, and the gearbox primary shaft. This is gearbox primary shaft. Why this is needed? Because every time you cannot stop this engine. If you want to stop the transmission, if you want to stop your vehicle, you cannot stop the total engine. So engine may generate its own power. That power will be stored in this flywheel in the form of rotations, and now you can connect and disconnect with the help of clutch. So clutch is an element which connects and disconnects your power to the transmission. Now, what are the requirements of this clutch? How this clutch should be developed? So requirement of this clutch are: it must transmit a torque. It must transmit a torque. Whatever the torque available here must be able to transmit it to the system. It must gradually engage. It must gradually engage. Otherwise, it may create a jerks. So jerk should not be there. It must be gradually engage and disengage. So dissipation of heat, because here the clutch works on the basis of friction. Due to the friction, this power is transmitted from one shaft to another shaft. So clutch works on the basis of friction. Friction creates a heat. So there must be a provision to dissipate the heat generated at this point. Now it must be dynamic balance. It must be dynamic by, as this part is in rotation, it must be balanced one. Otherwise it may creates the unbalanced forces on the vehicle, and vehicle may wobble due because of the clutch. So it must be balanced one. Damping of vibrations, whatever the vibrations will be created because of this friction and the transmission, it must damp it. It must absorb those vibrations. That is the condition of the clutch design. Size of the clutch, size should not be too big so that it cannot be accommodated in the engine. So size of the clutch will also plays a very important role, because as the size of the clutch increases, the area of the friction increases and it may transmit the more power. So if you look towards the four-wheeler and two-wheeler, in four-wheeler you will find the clutch is of somewhat bigger size than the clutch in the two-wheeler, because two-wheelers have a less capacity engine, so they need to transfer a less power to the transmission system, whereas in the four-wheeler you'll find the power is more, so they need to transfer a more, so bigger size. So as the area increases, the friction increases, and because of the friction, power transmission also increases. It must be non-exertive operation of the disengagement. It must be smooth enough so that the driver will feel comfort for operation of this clutch. Now clutch is operated with the help of this lever, that is called foot lever, and in the four-wheeler, and it is operated in many cases, it might be with the help of mechanical linkage, or in modern engines you will find that these are also operated with the help of oil or hydraulic operated. So in case when your leg or your foot is not on this lever, then this normally this clutch is in engage position. Whenever you want to disengage it, you have to press this lever. So if you keep this pressing this lever in the press position, then as long as you press it, your clutch will be in disengage position. If you release your foot from this lever, then it will engage. Means there might be a mechanism, there must be a mechanism which will keep these two parts in engage position. Which two parts? One is flywheel and second is clutch. Flywheel and clutch, this will be kept always in a, so there are some springs are provided here, so that the always there will be a force on this plate, that on this plate. So this is engagement and disengagement of the clutch. Now what are the different clutches? There are two types of clutches are there: friction clutches and fluid flywheel. Friction clutches means whatever we have explained till now is the friction clutches. Now later on we'll discuss about the fluid flywheel, how because of instead of this friction, there is a fluid is filled in this cavity, and that fluid transfers power from one shaft to another shaft. Now see the types of friction clutches. Here the list of types of friction clutches is shown: cone clutch, single plate clutch, diaphragm type clutch, multi-plate clutch, semi-centrifugal clutch, centrifugal clutch, electromagnetic clutch, vacuum clutch, and hydraulic clutch. So these are the actually these clutches are, in some clutches you will find in cone clutch you will find the different arrangement, in single plate you will find different, but from single plate to up to the hydraulic clutch you will find the clutch is same, only the operating mechanism is changing. One is diaphragm operating mechanism, second in this case only multi-plate clutch is different from the single plate. So many plates are there, but the mechanism of the operation is same. Semi-centrifugal clutch is also similar type. So we'll discuss one by one how these clutches works. Now, first of all, we'll discuss the principle of friction clutch, how friction takes place. Now you can see there is a one shaft where n RPMs are shown. So you may consider this as a flywheel, and second is a output shaft. This is input shaft and this is output shaft. When this input shaft is connected with the output shaft, then power will be transmitted because of the friction taking place between these two plates. See this plate and this plate, input, and this is output. This is frictional lining is here. Okay, now see the in this animation also you can see whenever there is a pressing of one plate to the other plate, then this shaft will rotate, otherwise this shaft will be idle. See, observe it, this shaft will be idle. So because of the friction, power transmits from one shaft to another shaft, and this process is called clutch. Now how it takes place, what is the phenomena behind it? Let W be the axial load applied. Mu is the coefficient of friction between these two surfaces. T is the torque transmitted, torque, whatever the rotational torque available here, whatever the power developed in the engine, that is nothing but the torque. So torque transmitted. R is the effective mean radius of friction surface, friction surface. Whole surface may not be in the touch with the second component. So whatever the touching part will be there, that we will consider as a effective mean friction radius. So how the torque will be transmitted? Torque is equal to mu W R. So mu is nothing but the coefficient of friction, W is the axial load applied. So in previous slide I have explained that there are springs on this clutch is always in the engaged position. So spring may create a W, that force on this clutch, because whenever you wanted to disconnect it, you are making a gap between these two plates. So that is not the W. W is always which the force created or the force maintained by the springs is the W. So mu W R is the mean radius, frictional radius, how much, the size of the clutch. If the size is bigger, R will be bigger. If the size is low, R will be less. Increase of any or all increases amount of torque transmitted. Torque, because we want, what is our aim is to transmit the torque to this output shaft. Whatever the torque developed by the engine, we are transmitting it to the output shaft. So increase out of this. Now how torque increase, torque can be increased. Increasing any value from these three value will increase your torque. So mu depends upon the material comprising frictional surfaces. Leather has a mu of 0.27, cork has 0.37, cotton fabric 0.4 or 0.5. So depending on the material which you have used here for the friction, this plate, this black plate is the friction. So whatever the material you use will increase your mu. W, maximum value is limited to that a driver can exert without under strain. Suppose you have fitted a very heavy springs here and that W you have increased, but while disengaging you need to apply a force against this spring. So it must be possible for a driver to press that pedal with his leg. Otherwise for 100 kilometer, he for operating that clutch for many times, he may not be able to drive a vehicle after that. So this W can be up to 100 to 120 Newton, because a driver can, a woman can exert up to 100 to 120 Newton force. Then R depends upon the space available. R depends upon the space available, because if the space is less and if you are increasing the size of the clutch, then R is not justified there. So this is a principle behind the friction clutch. Now here cone clutch is shown. These cone clutch are generally used where the power transmission is required at 100% efficiency. 100% efficiency means whatever the torque generated in the output input shaft will be transmitted to the output shaft. But this type of clutches are very compact, and this type of clutches are very positive clutches. So for disengagement, these clutches may create a problem. So you can observe there is a two cones. One is input shaft and another is a output shaft. The in this figure you can observe the cone clutch works like this. The only advantage of the cone clutch is that the normal force acting on the contact surface in this case is larger than the axial force as compared to the single plate clutch, in which the normal force acting on the contact surface is equal to the axial force. In the previous slide you might have seen axial force. Disadvantage is that if angle of the cone increases 20 beyond the 20 degree, then male cone tends to bind in the female cone and it becomes difficult to disengage the clutch. If the angle will increase, this angle, if the angle will increase beyond the 20 degree, or the less than the 20 degree, decrease less than the 20 degree, then it will be very difficult to disengage the clutch. A small amount of wear on the cone surface result in a considerable amount of the axial movement of the male cone, for which it will be difficult to allow. So this is very difficult to disengage this type of clutches when the angle will change, or because of the wearing the angle will change. So hope you understand the principle of this clutch. We'll discuss the remaining types of clutches in the next class. So thank you for watching this.